Shoster Shiur Mendel, it's a big covet to be here. Parshas Korach begins with Vayikach Korach. There are many pshatim. What Vayikach Korach? What exactly did Korach take? The pasuk doesn't give much explanation what he took, and all the Rishonim and Achronim give different mahalchim. What exactly Korach took? But one pshat is that Korach took the moment. There was a moment that Klal Yisrael was feeling beaten. They were feeling down after the Meraglim. They just got the Pesur. They're not going to go into Eretz Yisrael, and there was a depression. People were upset. And Korach sees that moment to lead a rebellion against Moshe Rabbeinu. And we can learn from that sometimes we have that moment that we need to seize. I always feel like by these symposiums, there's so much chaymer, there's so much given, there's so much material that's put out in front of people. And what's the takeaway? People need to seize the moment. I have people here from the morning, people are here now. This is a moment. It's a moment of Kiddush Hashem. It's a moment of Chizuk HaTorah, a moment of Eschabros with other people who are being Bechazik the Torah. So grab that Chizuk and take it with you. I'm really here as a Mamal Makam for one of my Rebbeim, Rav David Grossman Shlita. He's the head of the Bais Havaad in Lakewood. He unfortunately fell sick, Rav David Mebel Miriam. So he texted me late last night that he's not well and he cannot make it to this event. Would I be able to take his place? It reminded me that when I first started Chesed Mishpat a little over a decade ago, so I was learning, he took me in as a Chavrusa Talmud. And at one point my wife was not feeling well one day, and I texted him, I'm not going to make it, my wife's not feeling well. So he texted me back, Chesed Mishpat 3335. So at that time I had to look it up. And what he was referring to was a Ramah, citing the Chuvas Hadeshin. It says that a poil who has an oinus and he can't show up to work that day, he's patur. There's no repercussions for him not showing up to work. He doesn't necessarily get paid, but there's no repercussions for him not showing up to work if he fell sick and he couldn't come. The Trumas Hadeshin says that if his family member got sick, like his wife or his child, that's also called an einus, and it's not held against him if he couldn't come to work that day. So immediately, when I told him I can't come, my wife is sick, and that's really what we're trying to get when we talk about doing transaction as a Torah Jew. It's not just about getting facts and ideas. It's about getting a whole perspective. It's a way of looking at things through the Torah eyes, through the Chesed Mishpat's eyes, seeing things the way the Torah tells us to see them. It's a well-known story of a person who was boasting to Rabbi Salanter about his Rebbe, who was able to, he had such a koyach, someone annoyed him and he said his house should burn down, and sure enough, his house burned down. So Rabbi Salanter said, then your Rebbe's a mazik. If you have such a koyach hapeh, you can't use it to hurt people. Unless you was chayiv al pidin, you can't just be mazik people. You have to get the Torah view, the Torah viewpoint that shines through the halachas. And I have a brother who works in real estate, and he once pointed this out to me. He said, it's not so much about the ideas. We hear the ideas in the shiur, and we learn the sugyas, and then we go to work. And there's certain things that are so built into the flow of the way we do work and the way we promote our business and the way we promote ourselves that we just struggle to put two and two together and say, oh, that was the thing they were talking about. This is the lie that I'm not allowed to say. This is the defect that I'm not allowed to hide. So that's what we're trying to get when we focus on the way a Jew does transactions, when Torah does transactions. It's about viewing it through the Torah eyes. Now we all know the Gemara in Shabbos, Lamed Aleph, that when a person comes to Shamayim, there's a few questions they ask, 6 questions. And one of the first questions, according to this Gemara, the first is Nosasa v'Nosata be'emunah, were you honest in business? Now, we could ask that if the question was just, did you steal or didn't you steal, so we could have been more direct. Were you overlay sigzal or weren't you overlay sigzal? What exactly is the focus on? How'd you do business? Why is that the relevant point? The point should be, did you steal from other people? Did you hurt other people? Or didn't you? There's a zugang when people talk about business and they say, I'm making a living. Now, is that a Torah thing, that your business is the way you make a living? Is your life your business? Now, in yeshiva, a lot of times they tell us, of course not, Torah is Chaim. But Chazal didn't quite take it that way. When there's a pasuk of Echaim im Isha Asher Ahavta, and the Gemara says either it's talking about the Torah, or it's talking about your business, and it could be either or. And they're both viable options for the pasuk, for the meaning of the word Chaim, and it's both are contrasting it to a spouse. I know a lot of spouses feel that their husband views their business as another spouse. They don't necessarily take it so well, but there is something to it. Chazal view it that way. And what does that mean? Why is that? We also find the term derech eretz a lot referred to. Now, derech eretz in Chazal has at least 3 basic meanings. Colloquially, we always assume that derech eretz means you have good midos tevis. That's derech eretz, and we find many gemaras like that. We have brachas hamachalaf, you have Shabbos kuf yudaled, chulin pei daled, all the time limdu Torah derech eretz from this, from that. That derech eretz could mean that good, proper etiquette, the way you're supposed to act and react with people. But it has two other meanings. One of them, we find several Gemaras that refer to derech eretz as your business. Brachas lamed beis, brachas lamed hey. The brachas lamed beis is for our bot tzrichim chizuk. There are four things that need chizuk, and one of them is derech eretz. And Rashi says if you're a seicher, it means that you do your seicher with chizuk. If you're an uman, you do your umnus with chizuk. If you're a soldier, you fight with chizuk. But derech eretz could mean your schayr, could mean your business. You also find derech eretz meaning ishus. That's the relationship between a husband and a wife is referred to as derech eretz. And obviously you have that in Miyat derech eretz and Erev and Avkov. Then he references that derech eretz could be the relationship between a husband and a wife. So what exactly is the tzad hashav of all these things that we call just derech eretz? And derech eretz is it's a primary thing. Derech eretz kadmon l'Torah, it's such a critical piece. But what really is derech eretz, that the way Chazal put it in such a broad category? Let's just give one more Makom. There's a Gemara in Kedushin, Daf Mem, talks about somebody who's not b'mikra b'mishnu b'derech eretz, somebody who's missing out the pillars of life. He has mikra, he has mishnah, but he's missing derech eretz. The Gemara says he's eina min hayishuv. He's not a human. And based on that, we say that if somebody's not oisik b'yeshuvah shel olam, he doesn't have a normal job, then he's pasal edus. We don't accept his testimony in Bezdin. He's pasal edus. You don't have a job, you're a gambler, so not considered a normal way of making a living, at least before Bitcoin came around. So you're not oisik b'yeshuvah shel olam, you can't accept your testimony in Bezdin. Why? So there is a machlekes in Sanhedrin, in Kama, if it's because of there's a chashash gezel involved, but not necessarily. It's not there are more paskins. It's because he's just eina min hayishuv. He's just not involved in business. We just can't take his edus. He doesn't know money. He doesn't understand money because he doesn't have a normal job. What is this? What's this mitzias called derech eretz that we're so critical that without that you're just not min hayishuv? So derech eretz, we have the good Jewish word for it, and that's called being a mensch. You have to be a mensch. Now, being a mensch really is called a lot of things. You have to be a yid, Torah, avoda, but you also have to be a mensch. Without that, you're just not a human. You might have Torah and avoda, but you're just nicht a mensch. And it's a critical part of the person. It's the yesod adam. If you don't have yesod adam, you can't be a malach if you don't have the yesod adam. So what we find associated with this yishuv is what's called das. If you're missing das, then you're missing everything. Das is the collective knowledge of people. People call common sense. And as we all know, the common sense is very uncommon. So where do we come this term of common sense? It's the commonality of sense. It's that when people are put together as being oisik b'yeshuvah shel olam, that is what creates das. And you see this in the real world. People who are removed from the hub of humanity, they lose it. They lose their chosh hasechel. The more people are invested, I see this more boiled. You see like these Supreme Court justices, and they're old people, and they're sharp. What's the pshat? How do such people stay so sharp? They're tuck on top of it. I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them are tuck on top of the game, but to sway well into the 90s. And it's because they're on the tip of the iceberg of Yeshua Shel Olam. And that keeps them grounded. You know, the Warren Buffetts of the world also, the people that are deeply ingrained in the Yishuv Shel Olam, they generally, unless there's a specific machla, they keep their wits about them. You know, people who step out of it, they retire and take a path that does not involve an active seichel with people or with Torah. So then they push it, their minds disintegrate. Hashem put das together with derech eretz. And the reason for this is as follows. We're here in this world to build it. There was a world once upon a time where it was Ruach L'kim Racheves Al Pnei Hamayim. The Rebbeinu Shalom did not have a Makom Hasharas HaShechina. And he created Adam to make that world into a Makom for Hasharas HaShechina. That's what we're here for. The way to do that is being Isaac b'Yeshuvah Shel Olam. There's two primary factors of Yeshuvah Shel Olam. And they're used interchangeably in Chazal and in Halachah. There's having children, Sheves, Yeshuvah Shel Olam. And then there's having a business. Now, not to minimize that Torah plays a primary role in Yishuv Shel Olam also. And we could even have a mayor who's going to say, I'm going to be meniach kolum l'sheba olam, I'm going to teach my kid Torah as an omnus. Havaad Torah is an amazing method of Yishuv Shel Olam. If it's serious Torah and it's done properly, it's an amazing mahalach of Yishuv Shel Olam. But someone who's going to work should not view it as a hechatimtza to make money. That's not how a yid should be looking at it. We don't look for the job that you're going to make the most money. It's not a mahalach. If it doesn't make you an Isaac b'Yeshuvah Shel Olam, then it's not for you. You have to find your role in this world, making the world into a makom hashros hashchina. And that means using all of your talents, all of your capabilities, everything you have to offer, and making it a world a more shchinadige place. It could be you make the best shoes, it could be you make the best investments, but you have to make the world into a better place than it was before. You're Isaac b'Yeshuva Shel Olam. That's going to be your das. That's going to be your chibur to the world. That's going to be your chibur to the Rebbeinu Shel Olam's world, and that's going to be your nitzchias. We see children as nitzchias. Someone who views his job properly will see his job as nitzchias. Chazal had no problem calling themselves Rabbi Yochanan Sandler, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. They had no problem calling themselves by their profession. That's defined who they are, because they did it with the full ruchnias that a young man goes to the Beis Medrash and that a person goes to daven. They did it with the full shleimus hanefesh. So that's what Isaac b'Yeshuva Shel Olam is. It's your makom and nitzchias. So when you're figuring out how much you should charge for something, it's not about how much money can I get out of it. It's in what way is this the best for the world. Now, if you're going to work without taking anything out of the world, then you have no way to put back in. You're going to have to work to get paid so that you can keep the cycle going, and the way we value your work is by how much money people are willing to pay for it. That's heichetimza, to know how much you're being Isaac b'Yeshuva Shel Olam, and that way you can take that, you'll use it, not for yourself, you'll use it for your ruchnias, to build your ruchnias, to build your family's ruchnias, and then it's all back into the Yeshuva Shel Olam, it's all building up a bigger and bigger Har Hashem. But that's the way Yid views his ruchnias. It's not about me, it's not about what I can get out of it, it's not about how comfortable I could be. It's about how much can I develop the Rebbeinu Shel Olam's world into a makom hashros hashchina. There's a beautiful Maisa, Jonathan Sachs, that's how he used to say about the Rebbe. He said that someone once sent a letter to the Rebbe, a whole long list of complaints. Rebbe, I have so many problems. I don't have a good living, and I don't daven well. I have sick children, and I have problems with shalom Bais, and I have emotional issues. A whole long litany of issues. And instead of writing a response, the Rebbe took his letter and just circled the first word of every sentence. I, and sent it back. The person got the message that all your problems are because you're so focused around the I. Put that aside and think, what can you bring to the world? What can you bring to the others? What can you bring to the people around you? And that, I think, is the way a Ben Torah does his transactions. That's the way Ben Torah does his business. You have to develop those attitudes. It's not just the knowledge, it's not just the idea. It's about what am I, in what way am I an Adam on the Rebbeinu Shel Olam's world. I have many times come across a situation that you go through the halachas, and something, it might be mutter, it might be aser, and I would speak to one of my rebbeim about it. Someone would come to ask me the shaila, and before I, pask in the shaila, mutter aser, I would speak it over with my Rosh Kollel, with my Rebbe. And very often, he would tell me, go tell the guy, would your father do such a thing? And that's it. Before you get into the nitty-gritty, yeah, you've had the hechetimza, a loophole, you could do it, you could pull the wool over the guy's eyes, but would your father do it? What's he saying? There's a certain shmek, there's a certain sense of right and wrong, that before you lose yourself in the nitty-gritty of what you could get away with, can't get away with, but what does the Torah want from me really? What really am I supposed to be taking out of this? And that is a much more important yediyah, it's a much more important birur than the specific sif in Shulchan Aruch that may or may not apply, because you're not going to know how to apply it until you have the einayim of Torah. And of course, if you're not sure, you'll have to speak to somebody who's a baki and a mumche in the inyanim. But the way to get all those things is taka by putting Roishev Rubai into the sugyas. There's no other way to get it. If you want to get that Ma'abar Torah, you want to get those einayim shel Torah, then it's not going to be take the field, what can I get out of it, then try to plug in a Shulchan Aruch. You're going to have to dive head first into the Yam of Torah. See what you can get out of it. See how your personality molds itself as it swims through the Torah. We have wonderful programs. Machon Smicha, if you're holding by Smicha. If you're not holding by Smicha, start now, you'll be holding by Smicha. If you're not holding there, jump into Yerucha. Well, Yerucha is very hands-on. It's 15 minutes a day, an hour a week. If you want to go weiter, you have 2 hours a day. We're starting a Yeru Mishpatecha, it's called. You can do a blot of Shulchan Aruch a week, and you'll get a Ktfisa, you'll get a Yad Shulchan Aruch, in the relevant parts of Shulchan Aruch. For example, this is a great shaila. A friend of mine was working for his wife was working for a company, and she was doing the copy for the website, and they asked her to write a page about crypto. So she wrote up a very nice page of copy of crypto, and on the page she put a link to a Coinbase. But she didn't just put a regular link, she put an affiliate link to Coinbase. So now on this major company that she wrote the website for, there's a little link planted on their page. And every time someone clicks on that link, she gets a kickback of crypto. It's mutter or aser. Now, the time she did it, it wasn't worth all that much, but then crypto went up a lot. And by the time she went to look back at it, there was well over $10,000 in that account. And now all of a sudden, she's not sure. It's her money. It's not her money. You have to split it. Shmaka shayla. I was opinion on this shayla. It's a good shayla, no? I'm using your website, putting my affiliate link. I'm not taking anything from you. You can look at it. I just put a sign on the bulletin board. I'm allowed to put a sign on the shul's bulletin board. Let's say I put a sign on the bulletin board here. If you want, I'm a moil, you want my services, call me. Then I have to give you a kickback every time someone calls? It's not not. So is this any different? I'm utilizing your traffic? Okay, I'm utilizing your traffic, but so what? That's one way to look at it. But not necessarily. There's no way you'd be creating this asset without the existence of this website. They need a constant upkeep of this website so you could be making this income. I'll tell you a more interesting shayla of the same line of reasoning. Who's a muhsik on cryptocurrency? In the good old days when you're dealing with money, so it's very simple. Whoever's the muhsik is the muhsik. If I have the money in my account, I'm the muhsik. Now I know digital money is digital money, but it's money. There's a muhsik behind that digital money. But once you're dealing with crypto and you think back, and you trace your way back to the blockchain, there's no muhsik, it's just a record. So we're arguing about who owns that record, that series of numbers, whatever it is. There is no asset behind it. Meaning if we're fighting over a digital bank account, not a crypto type of currency, a real currency that I got from a bank. It's true, it went through 1 million digital transactions. But right now, there is a bank that I could walk into and say, either you give me my money or I'm taking your desk. There's a physical asset behind the money. Try that in crypto, you're not going to get very far. You're fighting about who owns a code. So now we're all of a sudden in a new world called IP, of intellectual property. Now, what's the halacha if we have a fight over who owns an intellectual property? Now, there's a huge body of halacha about intellectual property. It's very geschmack, goes back to Noid Yehuda, and there's a Shalom Meshiv. There's a beautiful body of halacha about intellectual property. But one thing that's not as clear is who's the muhsik. When we're fighting about ownership of an intellectual property, can you claim you're a muhsik? Now, if I'm trying to take away your cryptocurrency chain, your company or something like that, or perhaps you're a muhsik on a company. But if we're just fighting over about a recipe for pizza, and you claim it's your recipe, and I want to say it's my recipe, now good. According to most places, I can't steal it away. But if, let's say, I have a valid chesh mishpah claim to it, you happen to have had it for the past 100 years, but I'll be chesh mishpah have a claim to it, a suffix claim, not a valid claim, but a suffix claim. Okay, I'm not taking anything from you. I'm just going to make the recipe. You want to stop me, and you're being mitzi from my muhzakis. So that's a world of a difference than a fight over a digital asset that's based on real money. So these are geschmack zachin, and until you get into them, you're missing out. Another similar case was there was a guy building a building, and the neighbors were not happy about it. But he had the zoning, he had the permits, so nothing they could do. They come, they start digging. And the neighbor senses that it's a little bit too close to his property. He gets his own surveyor, and he realizes that they dug 6 inches into his property. And the foundation is going to go right there, 6 inches into his property. So he says, if I tell him now, then he's just going to move it over. I don't want this building here. So he's going to wait 3 years till we have a skyscraper here. Knock on the guy's door and say, Entschuldigt, you're on my land, take down the building. This could be real. What do you do in that case? Is he right or is he wrong? Now there's a sugya called Takanas HaShavim. That if somebody steals, let's say, a beam, a brick, and he builds it into his house, so normally you have to give back the item if it's still intact. If it weren't mashane, didn't change it, you got to give it back. But if he built it into his house, there's going to be a huge hefsid to return it. Then there's a special takana Chazal made that you could pay him for the item and not return the item. Takanas HaShavim, because or else the guy's never going to do tshuva. So that would be the knee-jerk reaction. Takanas HaShavim, listen, he put a building over here, it's mamish a huge hefsid, so you could force him to sell him the karka. However, the Rishonim say, it's a Rajba Ben Yeruchim, that on karka you don't say that. When it comes to real estate, you don't say Takanas HaShavim. You come and you build a building on my property, I can't force me to give away my property. Even if you're already a Goslin, so what? It's my property, go away. Take whatever building you want, get it off my property. So the that would be a good taina. There's no takanas hashavim. As I zakter Ramah. Now there's a mabit. Mabit says if it happened by mistake, there's takanas hashavim. If the builders built it by mistake, it's takanas hashavim. Very hard to hide behind this mabit. Most achreinim do not hold it as mabit. Very hard to pull off a good kimli like this mabit. Which would l'chayr mean that in such a case, and that would have been the reaction, and in such a case, the guy could tell him he's right. He's not a nice guy. Take down the building. So where's the catch? So again, this is why you got to be Reish Aruba over here. If you ask your father, would he do this? He wouldn't do this. He wouldn't do it. Even if he's really upset about this building, he wouldn't do this. Someone who's Reish Aruba entire just wouldn't do this. So where's the catch? There's a separate halacha, Shin Pei Vav. If you cause somebody a hefsid, so you're not chayav b'dei shemayim. You're not chayav b'dei adam. Bezdin can't force you to pay if you cause somebody a hefsid. You didn't do an act that caused damage. You just indirectly caused the damage to happen. Can't be mechayev the guy in Bezdin. But b'dei shemayim you're chayav. A groma is chayav b'dei shemayim. So the Ramah brings there in Shin Pei Vav, it's a Gemara Bava Basra, that you put the guy in chayim until he removes his groma. I mean, if he sets up a situation where a groma is going to happen, you put him in chayim and you force him to remove his groma. So now, if we plug that halacha in, again, we ran, it cost 200 simonim. But if you put that halacha in, now this guy who was upset about the building, he had a chiv hashavas aveda to tell him that your building's on someone else's property and try to save the guy for that massive loss. By not telling him, he's a groma. So on a technical level, could he force him to take off the building? Yes. But will Bezdin allow him to do that? No, we're going to put him in chayim until he removes that hefsed that he caused. So he's going to be forced from a Bezdin, klape shamayim, he's going to be forced to negotiate with the guy and sell that strip of property. But you got to be ligging in it, or else he'll miss that. The next Yerucha, for example, the current one actually is about malpractice. I just got a text this week. A nice Adel girl, she's a tailor. She's doing alterations in someone's shirt, and by mistake it was folded over, but she didn't realize when she was cutting, and she cut into the sleeve. It's a $100 shirt, and once there's a cut in the sleeve, there's really nothing you can do with it. It's not worth anything. She wants to know if she has to pay for the shirt. So we have a whole sug of Uman Shekilkil. This is what Yerucha is learning right now. You can get in, you can still get in. But Uman Shekilkil, if you hire a professional, it's malpractice. What's the halach of malpractice? So there's a few different levels Chazal give. Again, this medical malpractice happens to be its own sugya, it has its own marmukaimis, because we don't want doctors running away from the field. We give them special coverage when it comes to malpractice. And again, how that plays into modern day malpractice and suing their insurance. For all that, you're going to have to learn the Yerucha. But for this girl who's doing tailoring, she doesn't have any insurance. It wasn't a question of medical malpractice. But she was expecting to get paid $20 for the alterations, and now all of a sudden she's facing a bill of $100. So my first question to her was, were you a pesheya? Were you negligent? If you are an uman and you're negligent, then you're going to be chayiv. Even if you're doing it for free. Guys, you do me a favor. Help me out here. Fix my watch, fix my car. And you're pesheya, you're negligent, and you break it, you're going to be chayiv. You're mazik. Mazik is chayiv. So she said, no, she wasn't negligent. It's the type of mistake that could happen it wasn't negligent, but it could have been avoided. Had she been more careful, it could have been avoided. So then my next question there was, were you getting paid for it? Were you supposed to get paid for it? She said, yeah. So as soon as you're getting paid, now you move from what's called a shemer chino to shemer sachar. If you're not getting paid, you're on the level of a shemer chino, b'chayiv for pshia, maybe a low level. If it's an einus karav la'aved, you'll be chayiv. But if it's an arav karav l'gneva, if it's a level of an einus, you'll be potter if you're doing it for free. If you're a volunteer, it can't hold you such high account. But once you're getting paid, now you're on the hook. If you're on the hook, you got to pay. So then I was wondering, wait a second. So she's on the hook, she's getting paid. So she has to pay $100 for the shirt that she ruined. But can she deduct the $20 that she was going to get paid? Why should she be able to deduct the $20? Because had you not been paying her those $20, she wouldn't have been chayiv. The whole basis for your claim is because you're paying her. And since you're paying her, that's why she's chayiv. So she should be able to at least get paid. The minute you take away her payment, that she's not getting paid, she should be potter. Sound like a svara to me. Even have a basis to such a svara. We find such a thing by shemer sachar. There is such a svara brought in the achreinim. If a guy was hired to watch something, and it ended up getting stolen, he was negligent. Said still, there is a svara in the achreinim, they have to pay him. Because if he was negligent, you chayiv anyway. If he was negligent to start, it was just stolen, he was not negligent. So even though the mice didn't do his job, he didn't watch the thing, it got stolen, you're going to have to pay him. Because had you not paid him, you wouldn't be chayiv for gneva. But that was wrong. That cheshbon is wrong. And for this, you got to get into the lamdas of the sugya. Why is an uman a sher mesachar? Not quite because he's getting paid. Because he's getting paid for the work he's doing. That's why. That's why he's getting paid. The pay equals the work. So the reason he's sher mesachar is because bahia no. Every uman wants you to choose them, or else you could have chosen somebody else down the block. So the fact that you chose them to do the work, that's the payment. So over here, her payment wasn't that she's going to get the $20, it's that you chose her to be the one that's going to get the $20. And that she had already. So Mela, in that case, she had to pay for the shirt, and she was high for the whole thing, and she did not get paid. Now, even that's not so simple. There's a beautiful case in the Ksais HaChoshim of a guy who he was offered by an Arabi, by an Arab, in the bazaar somewhere. He offered him a brick that was either lead or gold, one or the other. And he says, "You want to buy it or not?" So he said, "I got to take it to my guys." So he takes it to, 42nd Street was still a thing, wherever they had over there. So he brings it to his guy, and he tells him, "Listen, here's the deal. If this is gold, we're both going to be rich. If it's lead, we lose our money. But if it's gold, we're rich. So test this thing out. Let me know if it's gold. You'll be paid handsomely, and it's going to be murdik. Otherwise, if it's not, let me know, and I'll just give it right back." The guy does his thing. He weighs it. He spits on it. He bites it. I don't know what exactly he did, and he paskins. This thing is gold inside. So the guy's very excited. The bar, he goes running. He right to the Arab. He throws the money at him, and of course the Arab disappears a moment later. So he comes back with his brick, and he starts melting it down, and sure enough, it's lead inside. No gold to be seen. So the shaila is the guy who did the testing, is he chayiv to pay for all the money that he threw at this Arab who is no longer to be found? So you would assume yes, he was going to be paid. Tain is the Ksais HaChoshim, wait a second. What if he would have done his job properly? Would he have gotten paid? Had he done the job properly, he would have weighed this thing. He would have said this thing is not gold, it's lead. And then he would not have gotten paid. It would have been game over. The whole deal was that if it's gold, we're going to be rich, and I'll pay you handsomely. But on the side it was lead, he would not have gotten paid. So it's true he messed up. But even had he done his job, he would not have gotten paid. Zok says this is not a paid uman. If he's not a paid uman, he's not chayiv. So you got to be there. I just got a call about the future Yerucha. The next month's Yerucha is going to be Commerce on Shabbos. And someone who's been in real estate management for a very long time. And he's all of a sudden he woke up and said, I have his washing machine sitting on my property. The goyim, they come on Shabbos, they put in quarters, and they're doing their loads on Shabbos, or they buy a prepaid card, and they're doing their laundry on Shabbos. What about Schar Shabbos? You're not allowed to make money on Shabbos. There's separate halachah. Besides, you're not allowed to do business on Shabbos. You're not allowed to have a guy do work for you on Shabbos. There's Malachas Akum, there's Mir Lakum, there's Mekach Memker b'Shabbos. But there's also Schar Shabbos. You're not allowed to make money on Shabbos. So is he allowed to be making money in his machines on Shabbos? He was never on this question before. Now he's got years and years of quarters that already has been changed into who knows what. He's got thousands of dollars by now that maybe is taken Bais of Schar Shabbos. You have to work through. Is it what's Bechal the halach of Schar Shabbos b'Shegig? And even if it's mutter, but is this called a Shegig? Is this called Schar Shabbos? Do we have a Havlah here? Can we say just the fact that the quarters got mixed up in the machine? Is that called a Havlah or not? These are all very geschmack zachet. Even had a shayla, if you're allowed to tell your kids on Shabbos, if you clean the table, you get dessert. Is that Schar Shabbos? Can't hire people to do work on Shabbos. What do you say to that shayla? I think your kids are going to want to hear about this. Clean the room, you get dessert, maybe not. So I can't do that today. I can't do it. Wish I could. Of course, you're going to turn around and say, after they cleaned it up, oh, sorry, I can't give you the ice cream. It's Schar Shabbos. So the truth is, Schar Shabbos is really an isser on the person taking the money. It's not really on the person giving the money. That's why if you have a guy doing permitted work for you on Shabbos, if you have a guy doing, let's say, washing the dishes on Shabbos in a way that's mutter, or just doing other melachas Shabbos that are mutter, you're allowed to pay them for the work. You pay them on Shabbos. You're allowed to pay them for the work they did on Shabbos. A guy is allowed to earn money on Shabbos. The isser is not on the person paying; it's on the person getting it. So we could argue that for a cotton maybe it's mutter, but it's not going to help you bar or bas mitzvah age kids. So we'll have to, call in the troops. We'll have to call in the heter and say, no, your kids, they're cleaning that room whether they like it or not. That ice cream is just, it just incentivize things to keep things smooth. But there's no two ways about this, and that is a valid taina. You can go with that. Al Kapanim, there's a beautiful tanchuma. Zochar Esher Osel Cha Amalek B'derech Tzedchim Mitzrayim. Bono, referring to this, remember what Amalek did to you, says, Moiznei Mirma Tehavas Hashem Pasuk Mishlei. People have unjust scales. Is Tehavas Hashem. If you see a door, he's a door Shemidois of Sheker. If you see a nation a generation that they cheat in business, you can be sure that the government is going to be coming after them. It says, it says right after Moiznei Mirma, because it says Bazodain ve'evei kolein. The Tanchuma continues and says, we find this reference in the Torah already. It says, you cannot have unjust scales in your house. And what does it say right after that? Zochar Eis Asher Osel Lecha Amalek. Remember what Amalek did. You're not even allowed to have in your house unjust scales. I always wondered if you have a dreidel that's a little bit weighted on one side. Are you allowed to have it in the house? Forget user. You're even allowed to have it in the house. Pashtus is also. If you're the type that plays for money, I don't think you're allowed to have it in the house. You're not allowed to have something, a tool, that is unjust. You're not allowed to have it in the house, even if you don't plan on using it. You got to get rid of it. So Maksiv Achra, what does it say after Yil L'cha B'Beischa? It says, Zachar Yisrael L'cha Amalek. Amalek comes and follows after. Amalek is a Malchus of Sheker. Opposed to the Yaakov Avinu's the Malchus of Emes, comes Esav, and the Spitz of Esav is the Idei Tzayid, comes from that. Esav comes Amalek. The Malchus of Sheker. You always said it's very frustrating in the business world because you assume that the people who cheat seem to get ahead. It looks like that. They cheat their way, and all of a sudden they're ahead of the line. So it's frustrating for the guy who wants to be honest, the guy who wants to be Nosav and Nosav B'Amunah. You feel like you're being left behind. Now, if our hashkafas are true, we'll recognize that there's a journey to be had. From Aleph, through Mem, through Saf. It's a mahalach. Beginning of the Aleph Bais to the middle of the Aleph Bais, at that point it's still Im. Maybe you're going to make it, maybe not. It's not bar. Eventually you'll get to the Tov, though. You'll get to the Torah's Emes. You'll get to the truth. You'll get to the reality. You get to the Torah Simecha, to the Torah of the Elvis. What is Sheker? Sheker cheats the line. They don't busy with no journey from Aleph. They go straight to the end. Go straight to the Shin. They try to get to the Tuf and it doesn't go. So they go back a drop. Kof, Reish, Shin, Kof, Reish, Shin, Kof, Reish, Shin. They never quite get there. Had they gone in order, they would have had a Keresh. Kof, Reish, Shin. You have a Keresh, you have a beam. Reish, Shin, Sof. You have a Reshes, you have a safety net. Something that can suspend even without ground. You have Shais. Shais is a foundation stone, the Adam's son Shais. Then finally you get to the Tuf. If you miss even one step, you end up with a kesher, you end up with a nut. You got to go in order. There's a mahalach to steiging through life. But if you do that mahalach, you'll get to that Tuf. You'll get to the Malchus of Emes. Otherwise, you get stuck in the Sheker. If you want to conquer Amalek, if you want to conquer that last stand, we have to conquer that Nosasav Nosata Be'emunah. We have to be honest in business, and I think perhaps that's what the Likkutei Torah is referring to in Parshas Balak. It says, Lahibit Oven B'Yakov Le'ra Omol B'Yisrael. So he's mechalik over there. He says Omol is referring to a ruchniistige amelus, but it starts with a yigiyah. Omol is B'Yisrael. That's the higher level of Klal Yisrael. But first it comes with a Yaakov, and there can't be an Oven in Yaakov. And he says that comes through a yigiyah of Emes. He says that's the weekday avodah. The weekday avodah is the yigiyah of Emes. When you go through the Yagi of Emes, then ultimately you'll get to the Yisrael. You get to the higher level. So we need to be Yeshuva Shel Olam. We need to build up our personality, the Adam who we are. We have to make this world into a Makom Asheres HaShechina. We have to find Machon Smicha in every corner, in every part of the world, in the universe, in the metaverse, in every aspect of the real world, the virtual worlds. We could spread the Rebbeinu Shalom Shechina everywhere today. It has to go everywhere through our Asek, through our Yagiyah, through our Nosasav Nosata Be'emunah, until we reach that time when it's Mola Oris Deas Hashem, Kamayim Loyom Mechasim, maybe Zeichet to see it, Meher Yameinu.